Welcome to the Network Plus Prepcast, your dedicated audio companion for mastering every objective on the CompTIA Network Plus certification exam. This series is produced by baremetalcyber.com. Risk management is a core part of any network security strategy because it enables organizations to make smarter, more focused decisions. Instead of attempting to secure everything equally, which is rarely feasible, risk management helps identify which systems, data, and services face the greatest threats. It allows teams to prioritize their defenses, allocate resources intelligently, and focus their efforts where they will have the most impact. This risk-focused approach is essential for operational planning and is heavily emphasized on the Network Plus exam in both theoretical and practical scenarios. This episode focuses on risk assessment and mitigation strategies, introduces key types of security assessments, and explains how security information and event management, or SIEM, systems support continuous visibility. These are foundational concepts that underpin everything from access control policies to incident response plans. Whether you're identifying risks in a new network design, validating protections through penetration testing, or analyzing real-time alerts from a SIEM platform, your ability to assess and act on risk determines the strength of your defenses. In network security, risk is defined as the likelihood of a loss or compromise occurring due to the presence of a vulnerability and a threat actor capable of exploiting it. Risk is not static. It changes as systems are added, users change roles, and threats evolve. The level of risk depends on how attractive a target is, how exposed it is, and how severe the impact would be if something went wrong. Understanding risk helps security teams decide where to focus their energy, what tools to deploy, and which vulnerabilities to fix first. Risk assessment is the process of identifying what assets are at stake, what threats exist, and how likely and severe a compromise would be. This involves listing hardware, software, user accounts, and data stores, identifying vulnerabilities or weaknesses, and estimating how likely different threats are to exploit them. Once that's done, risk levels are assigned, usually categorized as low, medium, or high. These levels inform decisions about mitigation, avoidance, or acceptance. For the exam, expect questions that ask you to analyze risk based on likelihood, impact, and asset value. There are several types of risk you may encounter. Acceptable risk is the level of exposure a business is willing to tolerate, either because the impact is minor or because the cost of mitigating it is too high. Residual risk is what remains after controls have been applied. Strategic risk affects long-term goals, operational risk affects day-to-day processes, and technical risk relates to systems and configuration. These classifications help define responsibility and guide mitigation. The exam may ask you to match risk types with examples or choose the correct response based on the risk level described. Risk mitigation strategies vary depending on the type and severity of the risk. Avoidance involves eliminating the risk altogether, for example, disabling a vulnerable feature. Reduction applies controls to minimize the chance or impact of an event, such as using a firewall or encryption. Transfer shifts the risk to another party through insurance or service-level agreements. Accepting the risk means recognizing the threat, but choosing not to act, often due to cost constraint. On the exam, you'll need to distinguish between these strategies and apply them to common network situations. Security assessments are formal evaluations used to identify weaknesses in a system, network, or organization. They typically include scanning for known vulnerabilities, testing how systems respond to attack attempts, and reviewing configurations for policy violations. Assessments may be required for compliance, performed as part of a risk management cycle, or conducted after major changes. They form the basis for hardening strategies and ongoing improvement. On the exam, expect to be asked what a security assessment includes and how it contributes to defense planning. It's important to understand the difference between a vulnerability assessment and a penetration test. A vulnerability assessment identifies known issues, such as outdated software, missing patches, or misconfigured services. It's usually automated and wide in scope. A penetration test simulates an actual attack, attempting to exploit weaknesses to test how far an attacker could get. Pen tests are often manual or semi-automated and more focused on depth. Both are essential tools, but they serve different purposes. On the exam, you'll need to match each assessment type to its function and result. Assessments can be internal or external. Internal assessments look at risks from within the network, such as employees, misconfigurations, or lateral movement potential. External assessments simulate outsider threats, like a hacker scanning for public-facing services. Performing both gives a more complete picture of the threat landscape. Internal assessments might reveal privilege misuse or poor segmentation, while external scans might reveal open ports or unpatched servers. The exam may ask which assessment type is appropriate for a given scenario or how to combine them effectively. SIEM, or Security Information and Event Management, is a centralized platform that collects, analyzes, and correlates logs from across the network. Instead of looking at logs one device at a time, SIEM systems aggregate logs from firewalls, switches, servers, endpoints, and cloud environments. They provide real-time detection capabilities, historical data analysis, and integration with alerting systems. SIEM tools support investigations, incident response, and compliance reporting. On the exam, expect to define what a SIEM does and identify the benefits it brings to network security monitoring. SIEM systems offer a broad range of capabilities. Real-time detection allows for immediate alerts on suspicious behavior, such as multiple failed login attempts or data exfiltration activity. Historical analysis enables teams to look back over weeks or months to find patterns or investigate incidents. SIEM platforms often integrate with SOAR tools, security orchestration, automation, and response systems to automate defensive action. These capabilities combine to create a centralized, proactive defense strategy. The exam may present SIEM log samples or ask how a SIEM would detect multi-stage attacks. For more cyber content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other podcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. SIEM platforms depend on a wide array of data sources to deliver value. These sources include firewalls, switches, routers, intrusion detection systems, antivirus platforms, endpoint protection tools, operating systems, and authentication servers. Authentication logs are especially valuable for spotting failed login attempts or suspicious logins from unusual locations. IDS and IPS alerts add visibility into threats trying to breach or already inside the network. When all these logs are collected into a centralized SIEM, it becomes much easier to connect the dots. On the exam, you may be asked to identify which data feeds are used by SIEM platforms and why each one matters. SIEM systems are critical for real-time incident detection. They are designed to identify anomalies such as behavior that doesn't match baseline activity. For example, if a user logs in from a foreign country or a database starts transferring terabytes of data during off months, the SIEM may detect and alert on these anomalies. Correlating multi-step attacks is another function, especially important in sophisticated threats, like advanced persistent threats. A SIEM can link events such as credential compromise, lateral movement, and data exfiltration into a coherent narrative. The SIEM may present examples of attack steps and ask how a SIEM contributes to recognizing them in real time. SIEM dashboards are used to visualize data, detect patterns, and support decision-making. These dashboards present trends over time, highlight spikes in activity, and allow filtering by source, severity, or user. This helps security teams prioritize response efforts, assign investigations, and escalate critical events. SIEM reporting tools also generate logs for compliance reviews, audits, and executive reporting. These reports can be scheduled or generated on demand to demonstrate that monitoring controls are in place. On the exam, expect to be tested on dashboard uses, visualization benefits, and audit reporting requirements tied to SIEM. SIEM systems require tuning to be effective. Without tuning, SIEMs can generate massive numbers of false positives, resulting in alert fatigue, wasted time, and missed true threats. Creating meaningful correlation rules, setting thresholds, and suppressing benign activity are all part of SIEM tuning. A poorly tuned SIEM becomes more noise than signal. These platforms also depend on high-quality log data. If logging is incomplete or if timestamps are mismatched across devices, analysis becomes unreliable. On the exam, be prepared to identify tuning challenges, data quality requirements, and the importance of contextual filtering in SIEM configuration. Compliance and audit frameworks often require organizations to implement SIEM capabilities. This includes HIPAA, PCI DSS, SOX, and ISO 27001, which mandate monitoring and log retention. SIEMs help meet these requirements by storing logs securely, alerting on unauthorized activity, and producing detailed records for auditors. Logs must be protected against tampering, time-synchronized, and retained for a defined period. During assessments, SIEMs demonstrate that threats are being monitored, policies are enforced, and response procedures are in place. The exam may ask which compliance standards rely on log monitoring and how SIEMs support regulatory requirements. SIEM systems are often integrated with SOAR tools, security orchestration, automation, and response platforms. This integration allows SIEM alerts to trigger automated scripts that perform containment steps, such as disabling a user account, quarantining a device, or blocking a specific IP address at the firewall. Response integration reduces time to containment and supports consistent, repeatable action. It also helps overworked security teams respond quickly without missing key steps. On the exam, be ready to connect SIEM alerts with automated responses and understand how SOAR tools extend the value of SIEM data. Understanding risk and SIEM functions is a critical part of the Network Plus exam. You should be able to define terms like residual risk, risk mitigation, and risk avoidance. You'll also need to know what a security assessment includes, how penetration testing differs from vulnerability scanning, and what types of data SIEMs collect. Be ready to identify benefits, limitations, and common deployment challenges for all of these tools. Questions may present scenarios where you're asked to choose the appropriate tool or method for identifying, managing, or responding to a specific threat or exposure. To summarize, managing security begins with understanding risk. By identifying vulnerabilities, assessing threats, and prioritizing responses, organizations can apply their defenses more intelligently. Security assessments reveal gaps and validate protections. SIEM systems monitor everything, detect anomalies, and help investigate and respond to incidents. Together, these strategies provide visibility, accountability, and operational resilience. For the exam, mastering risk analysis, knowing the assessment tools, and recognizing CME capabilities will prepare you to answer both conceptual and scenario-based questions with confidence. To conclude, episode 146, effective security depends not only on strong defenses, but on smart planning. Risk management tells you where to focus. Security assessments validate your progress. SIEM platforms watch everything in motion and let you know when something goes wrong. Each component supports the others, and together they create a network environment that can withstand evolving threats. On the Network Plus exam and in day-to-day operations, your understanding of these risk and monitoring tools is essential for proactive, well-informed defense planning. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Network Plus Prepcast, your trusted audio guide to the CompTIA Network Plus certification. This episode was produced by baremetalcyber.com. For more cybersecurity podcasts, books, and resources, visit baremetalcyber.com. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Bare Metal Cybersecurity Plus podcast. For more episodes, tools, and study support, visit us at baremetalcyber.com. And before you take the test, make sure to check out the practice questions in the book Achieve CompTIA Security Plus SY0-701 Exam Success by Dr. Jason Edwards. They cover every domain and are a powerful way to lock in your knowledge.